So you own a restaurant, and I'm gonna guess that you have a problem that you can't solve no matter how much money, time, or effort you throw at it, and that is consistency. Most restaurants suffer from consistency, whether it's in hospitality, whether it's in job performance, whether it's in attitude, buy-in, leadership performance, or lack of leadership. All of those things matter, and it's a huge deal because you're in one of the most competitive businesses. It's a very difficult business. Just right off the bat, the margins are low. It's very difficult to get off the ground. Marketing is very, very difficult. I want you to picture this. You have someone coming into your restaurant, right? And I want you to think about all the effort it took to get someone in the door for the very first time, right? Whether they saw your building outside or whether they walked in because someone told them about the restaurant or they saw it online, whatever it is, but all the effort it took to get them in the door. And for us to mess that up off of a guest experience, lack of hospitality is detrimental for business. 80% of business from a restaurant still comes from guest retention, right? Retaining the guest, retaining the customer. So that should be our number one focus, right? How do we retain the customer? The answer to that is obviously hospitality and consistency. Those two things have to coincide in order for us to have maximum guest retention. What I want to show you today is some things to focus on in order to get consistency, because normally when owners try and get consistency in their business, they focus on the wrong things. They focus on micromanaging, they focus on more training docs, they focus on more conversations, more meetings, all that good stuff. And although that doesn't necessarily mean we eliminate those things, we need to be focused on the right things. So let's talk about the top 4 reasons people leave a job. So let's start there. Let's reverse engineer from there, because what we want, A, is ultimate buy-in. The opposite of ultimate buy-in, the other side of that, is people basically quietly quitting, which is them just doing what it takes to not get fired. Now, we hear quietly quitting doesn't mean that they're gonna quit and they have a goal to quit or they're gonna quit anytime soon. It just means that they're doing the bare minimum to not get fired. And what that looks like is they act a different way when ownership or leadership's not around. You find yourself having to repeat yourself over and over again. You find yourself having to micromanage. You find yourself settling because you keep telling people to do things and they're just not doing them. Your managers are coming up with a lot of excuses of why they're not doing things, and they'll always state things like they have too much on their plate or they have too much paperwork or whatever that is. It takes a lot of form. So what we want to do is find out why people are in that phase and push them into the buy-in phase. So we want to go with these top 4 statistics of why people leave a job, because if you can understand that, then you'll understand what not to do and you'll understand what to work on and improve on, and we'll do the opposite of the failures of these top 4 things. So the number 1 reason someone leaves a job is leadership, bottom line, period. And you've probably could be a case study yourself, because you probably had a manager at one point in your life be the reason why you left a job. And you've probably experienced this as a restaurant owner that you've noticed, or as a business owner that you've noticed someone has left before at one place in time because of a leader. And so we really want to focus on making sure our leadership is developed. So there's 4 things that you want from your leadership team. One of them is guest recovery, which we don't want to talk about right now because that's not directly relating to this issue. But the other 3 are, which is inspiration. Your leadership team has to be inspirational. What that means is they have to inspire the staff. They don't need to be like Tony Robbins or David Goggins, where they're motivational all the time and saying these amazing things, these amazing quotes. All it means is that they are on the floor with the staff side by side. They are supportive of the staff. They understand the staff's needs and they have the staff's back. The staff truly believes that they are there for them. That's inspirational, right? They'll inspire them through their actions. The next thing is follow-up mastery. Your leadership team needs to be able to follow up with the staff. Now, this works because people will quit a job, especially A players, when managers don't follow up with staff in general. So not just them, of course, but if I'm an A player and there's a C player doing things and making my job harder, more difficult, making me feel less valuable as an employee because I'm working with a bunch of C players, I'm in an organization where there's a bunch of C players, and I'm the only A player, I'm one of the few, then it's the leadership's job to be able to follow up with those C players to make sure that we're rising them up to Bs and eventually As. But if we're never following up, that's not gonna happen. And the last thing is emotional intelligence. Your leadership team needs to have emotional intelligence so they can understand their emotions and react accordingly. For example, they're not reacting in anger if something upsets them or something irritates them. Maybe an employee says something that sets them off, right? They're not going to react on that emotion and lower the trust of the staff. And then there's also emotional intelligence to read your employees, understanding your employees, understanding when they're upset, understanding when they're not happy, understanding that they might not mean something in a negative way because of the way they are, right? No one operates the same. We all operate differently. And so it's important to understand those things. So we have to fix leadership, because the number 1 reason people leave a job is because of leadership. And so we want to make sure our leadership team is motivating the staff and inspiring the staff when we do it with those 3 things. The next thing is poor training. Imagine you go into a job and you're nervous and you took the job, you're excited, but you still don't know if it's the right decision. You don't know how excited you are about this job, but you do know it's a big investment of your time and your future, whether it's short-term or long-term. So you get on the floor and the training is just terrible. It's unorganized, it's kind of winging it has that kind of vibe. The trainer doesn't seem to care too much. They don't really answer your questions, and they don't really train you on everything you need to know. And so when you get on the floor, you still don't really know how to do your job. This happens in restaurants all the time. They follow someone around for a couple of days, then they get followed around for a couple of days, and basically the person's there just saying, the trainer's there, not trained, not a trained trainer, and sits there and goes, okay, have some conversations, talk a little bit, guide you a little bit, and that's about it, right? And they don't really know how to train, so they're not training you properly. They're probably training you bad habits. And so by the time you're done training, you don't feel comfortable on the floor. And then right away, you're looking for the exit sign, because you're like, they didn't even get this part right. What makes me think I'm going to enjoy the rest of this journey at this company? I always say that the guest experience is just as important as the employee experience. We need to take it just as serious. We need to make sure our employee experience is hospitable, right? We give them hospitality. We take care of them. We go above and beyond for them. We make them feel supported. We make them feel valued, seen, and heard. All that good stuff. Same thing we do for the guests, we want to do for the employees. Training needs to be robust. Now, that does not mean complicated. I'm all about simplicity, but we need to have a trained trainer, we have to have a training protocol to make sure they get trained properly, and then we need to actually train them in their job the right way so they feel 110% confident. And then they can say, wow, this place really took care of me, their training's really organized, I really like this, I enjoyed this process, now I'm excited to work here, right? This is giving me a lot of hope that this is gonna be a good environment to work in. Everyone will be performing at a high level. And then after that, the third reason people quit is lack of growth. Now, this is huge, and this is where a lot of businesses, not just restaurants, but businesses miss the mark, because the lack of growth is a big deal. As humans, we have to feel like we're growing, otherwise we become stagnant, jaded. That's when you get demotivation big time. You actually see it, right? It happens all the time. You hire a server, let's say, and they're all excited, right? And they're like, oh my gosh, can't wait, I love this job, love this place is awesome, I love the concept, this is great, right? You're checking in with them, how is everything? Oh, everything's great, right? Everyone's so nice. And they start off, right? First week, second week, third week, they're just rock stars, they're working hard, they're getting it, they come in, they have a good attitude. 6 months goes by and all of a sudden that same server has a bad attitude, right? They're complaining a lot, they're coming in late, they're leaving early, they're calling out. They have a completely different attitude and you're like, what happened? Was it me? Was it the management? What happened? Why did they switch? Is it them? Were they faking it in the beginning and now they're showing us their true colors? Probably not. That's lack of growth because you have that 6-month period. So let's just say you're a seasoned server, right? I've been serving for 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. I will still be motivated in this new job because I am still growing, because I'm growing in this new restaurant. I'm learning a new restaurant, menu, computer, people, right? Our coworkers, a new guest. I'm learning, so I'm growing. I'm feeling this growth, so I'm excited, I'm motivated. And that's where you see that excitement, that jolt of energy. But then once they learn everything, and they just stop right here, and now it's just get on the hamster wheel and go into your day-to-day, that's where you start getting jaded and get demotivated. Now, that's not every employee. You're gonna have rock stars, and the way you wanna look at it is, let's say you hire 10 people. If you're lucky, one of them will be a rock star. One of them will fall off, right? They'll end up quitting very early on or getting fired or whatever it is. And then you'll have those 8 in the middle. And those 8 in the middle is what you want to focus on, because the rock stars get to take care of themselves. They're going to be motivated no matter what. You don't need to give them the growth. They'll give themselves the growth and they'll give themselves the motivation. And that last one will end up showing themselves to the door, or you'll show them to the door. So now you have 8 people who are on the fence and need to be trained, nurtured, and coached all the time. And we need to keep them motivated, and those are the people you want to create growth metrics for. So that can be as simple as teaching them new stuff, teaching them about new wines. But then there has to be a finish line there. We can't just have a day where we're like, I'm gonna start talking about wines. Okay, cool, got it? Awesome, right? No, there has to be a wine training and then a wine testing. Beer training, beer testing. Food training, food testing. Hospitality training, hospitality testing. It has to be milestones for them to hit so they feel like they're growing, but they will, because with that, they are gonna grow and learn more about wine. And then they can sell the wine, they can talk about the wine, they can know the wine, so they have growth metrics, or you can give them responsibilities. I had managers before that were really smart and put a high-performing server on COGS, let's say, right? You're gonna order disposables, right? Or maybe you'll just do the liquor inventory for us. We'll have you come in and do the liquor inventory. How would you like that? We'll give you a really good schedule. You come in and do the liquor inventory and we'll show you how to do that. So those are the types of things that give growth metrics. Now, the 4th reason people leave is pay. Now, everyone always thinks pay is a big issue, right? They always think, oh man, Preston, I can't pay my staff enough, or they don't make enough tips, whatever it is. But pay is the 4th reason why people leave a job. It's not even the top 3. So what you want to focus on before worrying about pay is you want to focus on those top 3 things: leadership, training, and growth, right? How do I maximize my leadership to make sure my leadership is getting the most out of these employees? Because it costs money to retrain employees. Now, again, wrong focuses, right? A lot of restaurant owners focus on the hard costs. Well, it costs, let's say, $1,500 to train a new employee for all the days they have to be here and all the days we have to pay them. It's $1,500 to train a new server. But there's a lot of invisible costs that are way more detrimental to your business. For example, they're pulling away your trainer to be able to execute at a high level, right? So you're losing a little bit of money on that. They're pulling away the manager for having to do admin duty for a new hire. You might have an HR person that gets pulled away in their duties or has to put time and effort into the new hire process. And more importantly, you're gonna have a phase, especially if you don't have dialed training and dialed leadership, where you're gonna have a phase where they're gonna get on the floor and they're not gonna be good because we didn't train them well. We definitely didn't train them on brand. And so because we didn't train them well, they're gonna burn some really loyal guests that comes in, they've been there 15 times, they freaking love it. All their anniversaries there, and then when they have a corporate event, they always recommend you and blah, 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 blah. This person comes in, 15th visit, 10th visit, whatever it is, loves the place, and then they get a new employee who is poorly trained and burns them. And then that person's never coming back. So you don't know those costs because you haven't mastered the training process and the leadership process, so you know there's a big problem. But that gap of them being able to get to the point where they're gonna not burn as many guests is long because they're not trained properly. So down here, they're burning guests a lot, right? And it gets less and less and less and less, but there's this point where they're burning a lot of guests and they don't see it, because one bad experience is gonna lead to someone not coming back. And 80% of people won't say anything in the restaurant, they just won't come back. So we need to make sure that the leadership team is developed to get the most out of our employees. It's so freaking important, right? We wanna train them up, we wanna get them excited, we wanna make sure that they're gonna stay, we wanna make sure they don't get into that quitting territory, we wanna make sure that they perform at a high level. And then after that, training. We have to make sure our training is robust. You need to train the trainer protocol. You have to train your staff to train. Because you're the best server, because you're the server with the highest sales or the best reviews, does not mean that you're gonna be a good trainer. Because you've been there the longest, does not mean you're gonna be a good trainer. Seniority has nothing to do with skill set of training. In fact, it usually is detrimental because they have bad attitudes and they have their own entitlements. They're in their comfort zone. They want to stay there and they've protected it because they've learned how to cut some corners without you noticing and stay in that comfort zone, and they've mastered it, right? And then they're going to teach that to the trainee unknowingly because that's their routine. And so trained trainers have to know how to train people. They don't have to read people. They have to make sure that the person's actually understanding the information. They have to assess them to make sure they should move on to the next day. All those things matter. That's why you need to have a train the trainer protocol. The top 10% of restaurants, they all have train trainer protocols. Guarantee you're not going to walk into one of those restaurants and they don't have certified trainers that are hand-picked and hand-selected. To pick the right trainers though, you have to have a motivation to be a trainer, which means there has to be some sort of incentive. Now that could be money, which is my least favorite, but that can be better shifts, right? You get the best schedule, you get the best shifts. Let's say I worked with a restaurant that had big parties, and everyone wants to take a big party because it's guaranteed tips. It's a lot easier than taking, let's say, 10 tables at once instead of taking the big table. It just makes your job easier and they make more money. So everyone wants big parties. So in order to take a big party, there's a list of people who rotate the big parties and they all have to be trainers. The only trainers get to take the big parties. Only closers get coffee, kind of thing. Become a trainer so that way you can actually get more out of your trainers because the stakes are higher. If you're just like, I'm gonna buy you a free meal, right? I mean, that's nice, right? That's cool, it's nice, but it's not gonna move the needle enough. I'm gonna pay you $1 more an hour. Again, nice, but like that's too short term. Servers don't think that way, for example. Maybe it's the hostess, but like servers are thinking, I make, $100 a night. You're gonna give me $1 more. I work 6 hours, so I make $6 extra. That's what they're thinking. They don't see the big picture. So like, no thanks, right? So they'll say, sure, that's fine, thank you, but they're not gonna be properly motivated. We want them to want to hold on to that position and do whatever it takes to. Also, trained trainers bridge the gap from leadership to employees. So you have actually extra leadership on the floor with the trainers if you train them right. And so they're not gonna ever be tasked with reprimanding people or correcting people, but what they will be tasked with is being your eyes and ears. So if we say Preston, he's been slacking off a lot lately. I noticed he's not greeting the guests the right way. I noticed he's not upselling, whatever it is. That way you have an extra pair of eyes and ears, and then you can go in and talk to those team members accordingly that aren't performing because a trainer caught it, because they're on the floor with them. And after that, it's lack of growth. And lack of growth is huge. Like, let's set up growth metrics. There could be a simple growth metric, which is just moving up, right? First of all, growth does not mean another position title or more money. A growth just simply means that we're giving them somewhere to grow. But in this case, we can say, okay, it can be a title, it can be money, because we can say, by the way, your new server, congratulations, your new busser, dishwasher, hostess, whatever. We have a robust training process to get you to become a manager if you're interested, right? We'll train you how to become a manager, train you how to run a business. Remember, everything's all about framing. So we want to show them all the benefits of becoming a manager. And so we have a clear-cut path, right? You hit these milestones and you will become manager if you hit these milestones and stay above these milestones. And then last thing is pay, wouldn't even worry about it. So those three things are huge. If you want to improve everything in your restaurant, if you want to get consistency in your restaurant, elevated hospitality, then you have to have those top three things mapped out, decked out, maxed out. That should be your main focus, because ultimately everything runs through your front of the house staff, right? They control your guest retention, and that's so freaking important. They control your upsells. That's important. So we want to make sure they're trained at the highest level possible. First things first is identifying the biggest problems in all three categories, and second is fixing it.